Thank you very much. It's great to be here at Luxury Lab. This year's theme is very near and dear to my heart, the future of luxury. You can actually make the argument that my life has been leading up to me being here today. And in fact, that my journey to the stage here this morning began back in 1986, when this clicker started. When my best friend's family took us to Vancouver, British Columbia for the World Exposition. And it was here that I first saw the power of technology to shape the future, and what a luxurious future it was going to be. If you had asked me back then what 2018 would be like, I probably would have told you, well, we'll all be living in spherical houses and taking the monorail to work. We probably won't be doing that much work because our robot butlers would do most of the heavy lifting. Now, I wasn't totally right about the predictions, but it was true that I knew I was destined for a career in technology. And I was a giant nerd back then. And when I grew up, I became even a bigger nerd. This is me today. I have my dream job. I run an interactive media lab in Los Angeles. And we play with new technologies and research new trends to see how it will impact the travel and luxury brands. And so today I'm going to talk to you about a couple of different technologies. But the thing about technology is that there's always going to be something new and exciting. And so I would also like to give you guys a framework for, as you're looking at a new technology or hearing about something new, deciding how you want to incorporate this into your businesses. And that framework is storytelling. Now, this isn't a new idea. This guy is named Thomas LeBlanc. He has a library in Wetzlar, Germany. He calls it the Fantastical Library. And it's one of the largest collections of science fiction in the world. But this library is a little different. They work with Fortune 500 companies to research upcoming technologies and businesses. So think about that. Storytellers are informing businesses how to invest in technology. But what about technology and luxury? This relationship is a little bit more complicated, right? And it's because we can't necessarily say that more of technology necessarily equals a more luxurious experience. In some cases, they're very well aligned. Like in the example of my robot butlers, you could imagine the more technology you throw on those things, the better it's going to be from a luxury experience. But sometimes, technology is the antithesis of luxury. Think about how luxurious it is in this day and age, what a luxury it is to be able to unplug from our technology, to be able to put our devices away and just connect with nature. That's a very luxurious experience, and it doesn't involve technology at all. So what's going on here? Why is there this complicated relationship? Well, for that, I'm going to turn to a guy who is a master of combining technology and storytelling, Alfonso Cuarón. And what he says about technology is that technology is just technology. It's not good or bad. Technologies are tools. And this really gets at the heart of why there's this complicated relationship. Because luxury is not at all a tool. Luxury has a very strong point of view. Whereas technology can be used by anyone to do almost anything. It's really the context that we have to add that brings technology into the luxury space. And that context is storytelling. Okay, there's this idea that there's really only 7 different kinds of stories. Every story you see, there's really only 7 different kinds. Well, I think when it comes to luxury and technology, there are really only 3 different kinds of stories that you guys need to know. The first is this idea where technology is dependent on luxury to exist. So a good example here is Tesla. Elon Musk set out to build an electric car company for the masses, but he realized very early on that he wasn't going to be able to scale up by himself. So instead what he did is he turned to the luxury market and he made a luxury car. Okay, so this is a great example. It's a very easy story to understand because essentially the luxury has to be built right into the technology itself. But this story is dangerous because we know that over time that technology is going to become more and more available, so it only lasts for a certain period of time. The next kind of story we tell is a story of partnership. So here you have a technology that exists across an entire spectrum, and we carve one niche out of it to make it luxury. So think about in-flight technology on airlines. Right now there's a veritable arms race going on in first-class cabins, cramming as much technology as you can into, and it's pretty amazing what you can get now. You have power outlets and lamps and flat-screen TVs and thousands of movies and even massaging seats. All of this in a premium space on an airplane where there's very little space. So this is really the story of how you take a technology that exists and put a luxury spin on it, make it special, make it extraordinary. And finally, there are those technologies that are a threat to luxury. And these are the ones we really need to worry about, and these are the ones where storytelling is key. So Google has this assistant. They've had it for a while. You can ask it things like, what's the population of Albania, or give me pi to 26 digits. I warned you that I'm a nerd. So, and then you've also been able to use it as this personal assistant, like, set an alarm for me in 20 minutes, or put my doctor's appointment in my calendar. But this was still dependent on digital. You still needed a Google Calendar for this to work. Well, 2 weeks ago, at their developer conference, Google unveiled a new version of their assistant. And in the demo, the guy asked Google to call a local hair salon and make an appointment for a haircut. And we listened as Google called a person on the phone and talked to them. At no point did the woman on the phone have any idea she was talking to a machine. And we listened as the Google Assistant successfully navigated booking an appointment for this guy. So why is this so significant? Well, now for the first time, a digital technology is crossing over into the analog world. They could have been calling somebody in a remote part of the world on a rotary phone with no access to internet and could have made this appointment. And this is really, truly in the realm of personal assistant, something that is typically a luxury. Google will make it free to everyone. So you can understand now for the luxury market, how do you survive in this kind of world? Well, it comes down to storytelling. Luxury is amazing at telling stories. What stories can we tell using these technologies? And I'll talk about that a little bit more in a bit. Now, in terms of identifying what companies are threats and which ones fall into this category, there's this expression at Facebook that's popular at Facebook, and it says that done is better than perfect. Okay, so for a technology company, this is the mantra that most of them live by. Because when it comes to technology, it's more important to be the first in the market than to put a perfect product out there. Okay, and in fact, with technology, with the landscape changing so quickly, the idea of having something that's perfect, it doesn't really exist. And in fact, it's more valuable to show that your company is nimble and agile and able to change quickly. But for luxury, this makes absolutely no sense. Luxury is striving for perfection. Luxury would never sacrifice quality for speed of execution. Right? And so that's why you see where the problem comes and what the big challenge is. How can we push the story back towards making perfect the value, not complete? Okay, one last thing about technology and storytelling. So most of you are probably too young to remember what this is, but this is a cell phone. This is the Motorola Dynatec 8000X. They were like way better at naming phones back then. And we look at this today, right, and we think that this is sort of ridiculous. It's not luxury at all, right? It's ugly, it's huge, it's inefficient, it's old, it's outdated, all of this stuff. But if we look back to a cover article in the San Francisco Chronicle from 1987. So this is an investment banker. He's got a $400 haircut, he's got a tailored suit, he's driving a Porsche. And yet what screams luxury about this picture is that same stupid phone. Right? So this is the power that luxury has to put technology in a context that is impressive. Okay, let's get into the technologies and trends. Now I'm going to talk about 5 different things. And in each case I'm going to talk about the stories that luxury tells around it. So the first one I want to talk about is this content explosion. That picture that you can see back there is actually an example of one of the first technological innovations that humankind had. And that was this idea of taking ochre and smearing it on cave walls 30,000 to 40,000 years ago. And what were they doing with this technology? They were telling stories. Right? What did they achieve? Effectively, they achieved immortality because we still are able to understand whatever that person wrote on those cave paintings so many thousands of years ago. Now back then, the population was very small, right? There were more saber-toothed tigers than humans. And so there really wasn't a huge demand for content. And even as we got into civilization and population started to grow, you still didn't really have a big demand for content because life was hard back then. Only the very, very rich had access to things like art and literature and could enjoy those. Everybody else was working extremely hard. But then something changed. You had the advantage of the advent of the printing press. And now all of a sudden, you had the ability for everybody to consume content. And now you saw this explosive growth in content. And with each new technological innovation, there was this fear of, oh, is this going to displace the previous one? When movies came along, there was a worry that nobody would read books anymore. When TV came along, people thought, oh, nobody's going to go to movies anymore. When the internet came along, people thought, oh, people won't watch TV anymore. But the reality is that it isn't a zero-sum game. You actually have more and more demand for content. And technology makes it easier and easier for us to consume content in all kinds of ways. So while this audience was growing, we had this problem that who was creating the content was still very small. And there was this elite creator class, the publishers, the movie studios, television stations, right? But then with social media, all of a sudden we saw now the line between consumer and creator getting blurred. And this is going to become more and more important in the next decade or so, and I'll tell you why. So if we look at the numbers today, 300 hours of footage uploaded to YouTube every minute. On Twitch, which is a live streaming channel, there are over 3 million unique subscribers each month. For Netflix, over 1 billion hours of watched every week content. Okay, that's a huge amount of content. And what's interesting, if you look at the top 50 channels on YouTube, the top 50, only one of them is a brand. The rest of them are all individuals. Okay, so what does this say? It says that the demand for content is huge, and the people that are going to create it are going to be more, it's going to be more and more democratized. Now let me tell you one thing that's amazing about this though. This is just 2 dimensions. We're talking about video and images, technology that has existed for over 100 years. With virtual reality, mixed reality, augmented reality, we're now moving into the 3rd dimension of content. Now these are all nascent technologies in their infancy, but the amount that has been invested in the infrastructure continues to grow, and there is going to be a huge content need. And it's going to be people that are going to fill that content. And by the way, this content is interactive, so it's not just 3 dimensions, it's actually 4 dimensions, because you also have time. So what that means for the math nerds out there is you're not, let's take that 300 hours of YouTube content. You don't just multiply that by 2 and have 600 hours of content. It's 2 orders of magnitude, which means you multiply 300 by 300 by 300, which is 27 million hours of content every minute are going to be needed to fill this gap. So that's huge, and you can see why the individual creator becomes so important. And as we saw from Laura's talk, the ability for luxury brands to engage in social media is key, because luxury brands, again, are good at telling stories, right? And so people who are looking to create this content, who are looking to create stories, will turn to luxury brands. It's no secret that right now, if I were to post a selfie of myself at home, I might get like 1 or 2 likes. My mom probably, right? But if I'm to post a selfie of me at one of those like crazy glass-bottom huts in the Maldives, that same selfie, I guarantee you, is going to get at least 10 likes. And that's because of the luxury brand, right? Now, it's not just going to be people that fill this gap. Machines are also going to start creating content as well. There's a guy who's a huge fan of the actor Nicolas Cage. Such a big fan of Nicolas Cage that, in fact, he wants Nicolas Cage to appear in more movies. Right? So what he's done is he's actually used this technology to put Nicolas Cage into some of his favorite movies and TV shows. Okay, now this technology is not totally new. Those of you familiar with Snapchat lenses know about the face swap. Hollywood movie studios have spent a lot of money putting visually altering actors, making them younger, but when Hollywood does it, it costs millions of dollars and takes thousands of hours of rendering time to do it. This guy did this with his home computer in an evening. So this kind of content really brings into question things like authenticity. This kind of content is going to get better and better and easier to generate. And again, the stories that luxury brands will have to tell in a world where anybody can create anything becomes key. Because building that authenticity and having brands as the authentic voice is very important for consumers. Okay. Let's talk about the next trend. Sorry. Okay, so the power behind that Nicolas Cage thing is something called computer vision. Computer vision is a subdiscipline of artificial intelligence, or AI. All of the technology that is cool and futuristic today is based on AI. All of the tell you exactly why AI is so exciting to computer scientists and to storytellers. So, if we think about the history of computers and computing, one of the first applications of programming was around for the military, for calculating ballistic missile trajectories. Okay, and so what had to happen here is that a programmer had to tell the computer how to make these calculations. And for this, it was actually a perfect example, because these calculations are extremely computationally intensive and error-prone. But the formulas are very well known. So it was actually very easy for a programmer to explain to a computer how to calculate it, and then a computer could just do it in a fraction of the time without any errors. And for 50 years, this is how programming evolved. Essentially, programmers would tell the instructions to a computer of what to do next. So this was great for any problem where a human being could explain the steps required to get from A to B. But there was a whole class of problems that a computer couldn't solve, like art. What are the steps to creating art? Is there any way that a human being, even a fantastic artist, can sit and explain all the steps they need to create art? There's a funny story about Michelangelo, which is no doubt wildly apocryphal, but I'm still going to pretend like it really happened, where somebody asks Michelangelo, well, how did you carve the statue David? What was the inspiration? And he says, well, I took a block of granite and I carved away anything that didn't look like David. And you can see that even an intellect like Michelangelo, in this case, for him to explain the steps of how he did it, it's impossible, right? There's no way you can do it. So here's where artificial intelligence comes in. Because with AI, a programmer wouldn't tell the computer how to do this. Instead, it gives the computer a block of granite, it gives the computer a completed David statue, and it says, you figure it out. You figure out how to get from point A to B. And now, a computer is probably going to take a lot of times to figure out how to do it right. It's going to get a lot of things wrong. But remember, the computer can do 1 billion calculations per second. Even if it's right 1 in 1 billion times, that's all it takes. And so this is why artificial intelligence is so exciting. Because computers will learn things and learn things faster and faster as time goes. So let's talk about some of the applications of this. The first one I already touched on, which is computer vision. Now for a luxury brand, this is really interesting around personalization and customer service. So one of the big pioneers of computer vision is China. They have CCTV cameras all over the place, and they're actually able to identify kind of crazy, scary information about people. Things like gender and age and economic status. And if they have a clear enough picture of somebody, they can match their face against the database to identify actually who you are. Now this information has a very big brother and scary feel. But again, this is why storytelling comes into play. Because if we think about the context of luxury retail, and knowing our customers, and knowing the aspirations of our customers, we typically rely on customer service to be able to do this as sales associates. And they're really good at this. But to do this at scale, and add in computer databases of information, is something that's suddenly possible for us. And we can now customize experiences to consumers that they didn't even realize they wanted. But for it to not be scary, for it to not be Big Brother, we have to have them trust us with our information. And luxury brands are fantastic at establishing trust. Okay, next thing. I've already talked about this briefly. This is the voice assistant. No technology has gotten better, faster in the last couple of years than speech recognition and speech generation. And we see it everywhere. Right? Between Amazon Alexa and Siri and Google, more and more you're interacting with a computer when you do this stuff. And these are going to get better and better. And as we saw from the Google Assistant example, we're going to be able to distinguish less and less that we're actually talking to a machine. Could be scary from a customer service standpoint, or could be a huge opportunity. Because either you build a premium into your brand because in the future it'll be great to not have to talk to a machine instead if you're talking to a real person. Or, as the technology gets better and better, what is the personality that you're going to be able to add on top of this technology to make your computer assistant stand out and be superior to the default? Okay, the last one I want to talk about is the self-driving car. Now this is my favorite technology in the current day of all of them. Because if you think about science fiction and the future and what George back in 1986 would have been excited about, 100% self-driving cars. I mean, it's like the future, right? I mean, we're really here and now. I mean, this technology exists right now. And pretty much every part of artificial intelligence goes into powering this self-driving car, right? So it's a very cool technology, but I think why I was excited to talk about it today is because this is a perfect example of better being, or perfect being better than done, right? I don't want to get in a self-driving car that might not be perfect, right? I kind of want to get in a car that actually works. And so you can see, again, as an example of not all technology has to be done as better than perfect. And these are the kinds of things where luxury can step in. Now, does that mean this isn't a threat to luxury? Absolutely not. So, on the left here, this is a cartoon. It's a guy stuck in traffic, and he's fantasizing about a world where he drives a fancy sports car, but it's still stuck in traffic. Right? And this, to some extent, demonstrates the power of luxury. Owning this fancy sports car is such a great experience for him that he's willing to still sit in traffic. But I submit to you that, as funny as this is, I don't think this is really the case. More and more people are having less tolerance for sitting in traffic, and we're doing it more and more. If you look at growth in urban areas, if you look at commute times and congestion, these are all going up. And so, when you think about it, it comes to this next category that I'm going to talk about, which is personal transportation. Okay, so if we think about the car in itself, when it first came out in the early 20th century, it was a huge luxury, right, to be able to drive that car. But towards the end of the 20th century, cars themselves were no longer a luxury. It was just expectation that you could get in a car and drive from point A to point B easily. But nowadays, in a city, it's once again become a luxury, because you can't just get in a car, no matter what, no matter how fancy that car is, you can get from point A to point B easily. And so that's given rise to a whole new class of personal transportation devices. The first ones that I'm going to talk about are small, existing technologies on which we basically just electrify. And the technology behind this is batteries. Battery growth has gotten so good in the last couple of years, both in manufacturing and time, that we're out actually able to economically put the motors on these kinds of things. And it works. So I live in LA. My office is about 3 miles from my house. If I drive, can't do it in under 20 minutes. I have an electric bike. If I ride that electric bike, 7 minutes door to door. It's very hard to compete with that from an efficiency standpoint. Now the cost of these things is still pretty high, but we're now seeing a rise of bike sharing services and electric bike sharing services all over the world, right? And these things are really changing the ability for people to have their own personal transportation devices. In fact, you have some that are these baseless bike stations, where you don't even need to return the bike to a given area. You use an app to figure out where the bike is, go pick up that bike, and now you can ride it anywhere you want in the city, and then you just, when you're done, you just leave it right there on the street. And so again, these are mass plays that are more efficient ways to get around the city. So, what's the answer for luxury? What's the luxury's answer to this personal transportation thing? Obviously, the answer is flying cars, right? Something super futuristic, and yet it's here. There are no fewer than 20 startup companies building some form of flying car, right? And the idea, again, goes back to this story of being able to get ourselves around a city easily. And that story is going to need to be very powerful, because there are a huge number of regulatory issues these companies are going to need to overcome. But just the fact that so many companies are involved in this proves that that story is a very compelling one. Now, the technology behind what made most of these flying cars possible, it's all based on the same technology. And it's the technology that actually went into drones and made drones popular. And it's based on this thing called programmable hardware. Okay, so if we think about flight and humans flying, for a long time, when you were talking about fixed wing or single rotor aircraft, you needed a tremendous amount of training and experience in order to safely operate a flying vehicle. Right? And that was because, basically, to safely operate those things, you were needing to train a person and push them to the limits in terms of what was possible. Well, the big advent for drones and quadcopters was now all of a sudden you had a platform where you had 4 different propellers. Something that would be way too complicated for a human being to operate, but instead an onboard computer does all of the calculations in real time, 1,000 per second. And that means that you have a very simple control interface for the human being. That's how drones work, and that's how all of those flying vehicles work. And that's all based on this idea of programmable hardware. Now, programmable hardware is not new. But the reality is that for a long time, it was only accessible to hardware companies and super, super hardcore nerds, right? And much like the internet existed since the early 80s, it wasn't until the World Wide Web came in the mid to late 90s that all of a sudden everybody got on the internet. A similar thing is happening right now with programmable hardware. So you can see on the left is another device probably a lot of you are too young to remember, but this is the Nintendo Game Boy. Nintendo spent millions of dollars in R&D developing the platform for this. And they had to spend another millions of dollars in marketing because they needed this thing to be a success. Because the economics of it were that they had to print hundreds of thousands of these things in order to make it cost-effective to manufacture. And that's because the design and manufacturing tools of the day were extremely specialized and only available to a small percentage of people. But on the right, you can see this product that's available right now on Kickstarter. This was two guys who built the exact same functionality of the Nintendo Game Boy. In fact, they made it in color, which the original one wasn't. And they made it all in a device that fits on your keychain. This is two guys, and this was all based on technology that they're able to manufacture it in a way that they can sell on a one-to-one basis. And now, with programmable hardware, you can actually design things in a web interface and then download the plans, print on your own 3D printer. Or if you don't have a 3D printer, there's a million sites out now where you can send those plans and the next day there, your product will arrive. So, what does this mean for the luxury industry? Well, again, it comes back to storytelling and the stories we tell. And now, how can we tell stories now that we have access to this new, exciting technology? So, on the left, these are these badges from, there's this hacker conference that happens in Oregon for computer hackers. And a badge, you guys are all wearing them for Luxury Lab. A badge is something you get at every conference to validate whether you belong in the conference or not. But what these guys did is they actually put an embedded programmable hardware chip on there, and they had a sequence of numbers where you could actually hack this badge and get access to a cool game. Okay, so again, this was telling a story that was in line with the attendees of this conference. You're a hacker, let me give you something cool to hack and play with. But it also built a lot of brand loyalty for that conference, because now this is a badge they took home with them, and they could still have, even after the conference was over, something to interact with associated with the conference, and something that gives them positive associations with it for the next time that conference rolls around. And that was for a minimal investment. It was so cheap they were able to put it on every badge of the conference. We're seeing it with jewelry and things with NFC, near-field communication payments, the ability to pay with necklaces or bracelets or rings for all sorts of services, again, made possible. Think about what that means for your customer's story. They don't need to bring their device with them as they go through the store or through access to resort or get to certain areas of your hotel. But the last one I want to talk about is this shoe startup in Brooklyn. And they were really worried about counterfeits and people counterfeiting their shoes. So what they did is they printed a special 3D printed chip that got sewn into each shoe. And with an app, you could scan this chip and you could see not only where it had been manufactured, but on which truck it was delivered to the store, and finally who it was sold to at which store. So with any shoe, you could always verify the authenticity of that shoe. Now the interesting thing about this example is that it comes back to this question of, okay, well, where was all that data stored? That data about that shoe. And traditionally, this would be stored in a database by the company. But these guys were a startup, and they knew nobody would know us, nobody would trust us to store their data. So they actually used the last technology I'm going to talk about today, and they used this thing called blockchain. Okay, so here's the deal with blockchain. Blockchain is one of the most promising technologies that is currently available. It's extremely hot space, and lots of people are doing lots of different things. It's like the Wild West, though. So there's a lot of questionable things happening with blockchain as well. But I think luxury has a huge role to play with it, and that's what I want to talk to you about today. So the design of the internet is basically that you have centralized servers that store information. And then you have your client, your web browser or your mobile app, that is how you interact with these things. But storing that data is very key. And we have to fundamentally trust who is storing that data for us. The EU has just released this new GDPR rules on customer privacy, because of all the stuff that's happening with Facebook and other companies. The problem with trust and trust in companies is that you have, even companies with good reputations aren't always great at storing data. Because when you take all this data and you put it in a centralized place, two things happen. One, it immediately becomes a target for hackers. Right? Because a hacker, to hack one of these databases, suddenly gets access to millions of customer records. The other problem is, we don't really have any guarantee that these companies are being totally cool with all our data. Right? We're giving them an extremely amount, a huge amount of power to hold our data. So this is where blockchain comes along. And I'm not going to get into the technology of blockchain, because it's actually really amazing, but it involves a lot of really pretty crazy math. But the reality is what blockchain is attempting to do is it's attempting to say, how can I create a distributed database that's not centralized in one place and is also secure and hackable? And the way that blockchain works is the more people that are on the blockchain network, the more powerful it becomes. So now most of you, if you've heard of blockchain, you probably know the most famous example of blockchain is Bitcoin. Right? And so Bitcoin was super huge like a year ago because it essentially became this cryptocurrency that people were speculating on. The original idea behind Bitcoin was, can we create a virtual online currency that is not centrally maintained, not centrally managed, that is 100% secure, that doesn't require anybody to trust anyone else? Can I buy a product from you without worrying about you having to have my credit card information, but knowing that we all agree that I actually gave you that money? That's what Bitcoin attempted to do. And it was extremely successful at it. And in fact, it was so successful at it, that's what led to the speculation and people trading on it as a currency. But when we think about, well, how can we use blockchain to store some of these other things? How can we use it to track the supply chain for those speakers? How can we use it to track things like medical records? How can we use it to track media, like in Facebook? It doesn't work to treat it like a virtual currency. That can't store any of that stuff. And so that's why we saw the development of another cryptocurrency called Ethereum. And Ethereum is far more extensible because it basically allows you to build any experience, any kind of data-based thing in blockchain. Super secure. And so that's why we're seeing the rise of lots of blockchain startups. Now, what does this mean for luxury? Well, in the world as we know it right now, in the light of GDPR and consumers understanding more and more about their privacy, no matter how much customers trust your brand, their data is going to be something that is going to be more and more valuable and will become more and more important to their customers. And being one of the first companies to move towards blockchain, or at least experiment with blockchain and see what it's like, will yield dividends. Right, so there are a couple of companies already doing this. There's a startup called VeChain, and they have a service that basically allows tokens to be associated with luxury goods, so that you can do the same thing. And this is meant to combat counterfeit. Right, and with any bag, you can see the authenticity of that bag, where it's been, who's owned it. In the resale market, it tracks all the way through second ownership and all things like that. And then also De Beers is now using this for diamonds and storing not only who sold the diamond and who owns it and all the statistics on the diamond, but also how it was sourced and where it came from. So again, as we think about how we tell our customers' stories and the importance of privacy, using technologies like this allow us to tell much more compelling stories. Okay, I started this talk talking about the cave paintings 30 to 40,000 years ago. And really that was this idea of technology as enabling storytelling. And luxury really needs to aid us in terms of how we tell more and more compelling stories. This is a building in Tianjin, China, and it's a year old now. And I think it's fantastic. I mean, it's an amazing looking building just from an architecture standpoint. And again, if you've gone back to 1986 and asked me what buildings would look like in the future, I 100% would have said they're all going to look like this. I mean, it's an amazing testament to design and architecture. The purpose of this building library. It's filled with books, right? And so if there's any doubt that we as a society continue to place content and storytelling as paramount in terms of our values, there's no question given this library right here. And so as luxury brands, it's all on you guys to make sure that we're helping people tell their stories so they can truly live happy